It's me, Vicky Marie. No, I thought I was organised, but actually I'm not, am I? I don't close my curtain. Not organised at all. Oh, it's so hot. I feel like a limp lettuce. I wasn't even going to go on camera. Look at the state of me. My eyes, oh, terrible. Anyway, just one of those things. It's Spain, it's hot. Now, the other thing I need to tell you is I am on YouTube live, as in I'm not going through StreamYard, because StreamYard, I've reached my free limit of lives on StreamYard and I can't afford to do the paid one at the moment. So that means I can't sort of set up in the studio and I can't sort of show videos and things like that. But it doesn't matter, because I'm here to tell you about the latest a few developments in the Nancy Guthrie case. Unfortunately, none of them is a positive development where Nancy has been found or anyone has been held accountable. God, look at my eyes. Yeah, so sadly, not the best news that we could want. Don't know if I can go on an avatar. Might be better. I don't know how to go on an avatar on YouTube. So there you go. Yeah, normally I go through the StreamYard, and I don't really know how to do different things on the YouTube live. But anyway, as I say, I'm just here really to tell you these developments. A little bit of waffle first of all. Thank you to everyone for watching. Thank you for subscribing. I've had a lot of new subscribers over the last month, both on this channel. Don't forget my other channel, True Crime Chats. I will probably, if I can, download this video and upload it on there, maybe edit it a bit if I can. Again, I'm in a bit of unknown territory here. Well, I say unknown territory. I used to always go live on YouTube rather than StreamYard before I discovered StreamYard. But StreamYard is easy. It's expensive. I mean, it's €40 a month. It's a lot of money, isn't it? Whereas it used to be €10 a month. So it was €10 a month, and then they jumped up from 10 to 40. But it is easy to use. There's a lot of different things you can do on there. So that's why I try and use the paid one when I can, but I'm on the free one at the moment. You're only allowed a certain number of live, of actual recording hours. In fact, I can't even do a recording on there now until the 17th of August, because I stream quite a lot every day, at least once. So I've used up my hours of live streaming until the 17th of August. Anyway, that doesn't matter. I can always find a way to come on and give you the information about what's going on. So yeah, thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, thank you so much to all of you that contribute to my channel in any positive way. Special thank you as always to my members. We had a members live last night. Normally every second Thursday. It's not etched in stone, but generally in a month I will do at least 2, if not 3 members live streams, exclusive members live streams, and we had one last night. So the next one will be in a fortnight. Thank you to those of you who buy me coffees or send super stickers, PayPal me, etc. All the details of how to do that should be in the description under this video. And yeah, those of you and I've had such lovely messages, emails, all sorts of lovely thoughts you've sent out to me when my sister died, and it was a funeral this week, and now we have to move on without, we have to move on. At the end of the day, even when you lose a loved one, you have to carry on, really, for other people, if not for you, but also you have to carry on for them, because they would want you to. Somebody who loved you, they would want you to carry on make the most of your life. And yeah, remember them, obviously, and smile about them. But, you know, you have to move on. You just have to. Is that everything? So hello, you lovely lurkers. Thank you for watching. Hello to replay crew. As a kiss for lovely lurkers. A kiss for replay crew. Hello to chat. I don't think anyone's in the chat at the moment. No, there's a few of you watching, but you don't want to be in the chat. That's fine. You're the lovely lurkers. I'll say hello to people who come in the chat as and when they do. So let's get on with this. So what are we going to talk about in this video? So yeah, Nanos. He's done a couple of new interviews, hasn't he, lately? We watched the one with the young lad, the young interviewer. He's done another one since then. He's gone all chatty Cathy all of a sudden, you know, after not saying anything for a little while. Now, you know, it feels like he's trying to, you know, he's doing a lot of interviews, and it's good. To me, it's good, because the more you say, the better. Gives people something to talk about, stops them making things up, stops conspiracy theories, etc. The only thing that I would say is, of course, can't believe a word Nanos says. Sorry, Sheriff Nanos, if you're watching this. Honestly, I would love to have faith in you, but I don't really understand. There's a couple of things that I don't understand. Don't understand why you're in no contact with the Guthrie family at all now. I don't understand why you don't do what you might call a proper press conference. Why are you doing all these individual interviews with different podcasters? And they are podcasters at the end of the day. You know, people whinging about social media, don't speculate, oh, that podcast is this, podcast is that. But the people that Nanos is talking to, a lot of them are podcasters. You know, who decides whether a podcaster is a reliable one or not? I don't understand why it doesn't do, you know, your formal press conference up on a stage with the FBI, with, you know, like normal press conferences that he only did right at the beginning. So, you know, I do think there's a rift between him and the FBI. As much as he keeps saying there isn't, of course there is. You know, it's obvious. And it's like, the more he tries to pretend there isn't a rift, the more you think, oh yeah, there is. It's like, methinks he doth protest too much, isn't it? You're so busy saying, no rift. It's like, nothing to see here, no rift. Then you think, oh, there is a rift, you know, probably. Anyway, who knows? But he's come out with some information in these interviews that I'm going to tell you about. Now, this is what he says. Doesn't mean to say what that is true, of course. So, because a couple of the things that he's come out and said in these interviews, they directly contradict things that he said earlier. So the first thing he said is the hair. Do you remember the hair that we've been waiting for? You know, for the testing of the hair. There was a hair found at the scene. At first, it couldn't be used for anything because it was a hair that had fallen rather than was pulled out, so it had no roots. And, you know, not that long ago, you wouldn't have been able to do anything with that hair because DNA testing hadn't got advanced enough to test a hair follicle that had fallen out as opposed to being pulled out. Now it's reached a point where you can analyze it, even if it's fallen out and it hasn't got any of the root on it. So we were all waiting agog, weren't we, hoping that something would come of this hair that had gone to the labs, and, you know, would something come of it? No, nothing's come of it. So what Nanos has come out and said is the hair has not yielded any positive results. That doesn't mean to say it hasn't yielded a DNA, you know, some sort of DNA analysis, but they haven't been able to link it to anybody. Is that because the DNA from it was not in CODIS, or, Anyway, whatever the reason, what Nanos has said is that the hair that was found at the scene that has been tested has not proven useful in the investigation. Let's put it that way. Now, whether it will prove useful eventually when they actually have a suspect in custody and they test the DNA against the hair, maybe then it will. Maybe then it will become useful, because that's how they'll be able to match up the hair with the suspect. And, it'd be like, depending on who the suspect is, it'll be like, well, why were you in Nancy's house with a hair falling off you? You know what I mean? So it's possible it might prove useful in the future. But as he says, it's not useful at the moment. And the other thing he said about the DNA samples that he's got, that the police, the law enforcement have got, is those are still works in progress. So he didn't clarify exactly what DNA they've got, but he didn't actually rule anything out either. I mean, there's various things that can offer up DNA, isn't there? There's touch DNA, there's saliva, there's semen, there's all these different ways that you can find DNA. DNA can, even, as say, from saliva, it's like you might have only spoken, some saliva has come out of your mouth, and that could be found in that. So apparently, but it's quite a combination of DNA that they've got. So it's not just straightforward DNA on a door handle, for example, or DNA on the floor, like from saliva, or, God forbid, from semen on the bed. It's not as straightforward as that. There's a mixed, what they're calling mixed DNA, whatever that means, which probably means there's a few different, a few different, traces of DNA, not all of which will even be relevant for the case, because, there's blood, of course, in the house or on the porch. There might be DNA mixed in with Nancy's DNA. So it's very complex. Basically, that's what he has said. It's very complex. That is still a work in process. So we still don't know exactly about the DNA, and that is still ongoing. So although the hair DNA is proven not to be useful or relevant, this other DNA that's been found may prove to be relevant. So that's something else he told us. Now, another thing he told us, which is completely contradictory to what he said earlier, is that everyone is a suspect. Everyone is a suspect. Nobody's been cleared. Now, he's saying nobody's been cleared, but earlier on in this case, he said that the family and the spouses had been cleared. Said that categorically, didn't he? So, so have they been cleared or haven't they been cleared? And of course, Annie and Tommaso, they've come under a lot of scrutiny, especially because they were the last people to see Nancy alive, first and foremost. And then, of course, hi, David. Hope you're well. So first and foremost, I think Annie and Tommaso were always going to be suspects because they're the last people to see Nancy alive. She was at their house having a family games night or whatever. Tommaso dropped her off at home, apparently. So, of course, they're going to be suspects. But then very early on in the case, Ashley Banfield, a podcaster, said that Tommaso was a suspect. And she has doubled down on this. And just over the last couple of days, there's been a lot being said about it. It was the Pima County sheriffs, not Nanos himself, but his deputies, who told Ashley Banfield this. that Tommaso was a suspect. So that's why she said he was the main suspect, because that's what she was told. Now, it may well be that Tommaso was the main suspect in the beginning. He would be, to be fair. In the first few days, of course, he's going to be the main suspect. You know, his mother-in-law disappears after he's dropped her off at home. Of course, he's going to be a suspect. But then later on, Nanos came out and cleared the family, said the family and their spouses were cleared. But now he's saying nobody's been cleared. So what is the truth? What is the truth? And what do you think? Do you think, I mean, a lot of people are suspicious of Annie and Tommaso. I really don't know. Honestly, I don't, you know, statistics tell us that in these sort of cases, it is normally a family member. And then combined with the fact they're the last people to see Nancy alive, and the fact that it was Tommaso that took her home, it just seems logical that he'd be the suspect. But that doesn't mean to say that he did anything, of course, because they have been, we know they've been investigated, because their house was examined, their car was towed away and examined. Presumably nothing forensically was found, or wouldn't they have been arrested by now? You know, that's what I think. Surely, if Annie and Tommaso were the culprits, you know, were the perpetrators of whatever happened to Nancy, in 6 months, wouldn't something have turned up, some evidence? I just, honestly, I do feel that this is one of the weirdest cases I've ever looked at. In 6 months, nothing. These weird ransom notes, flowery language, she's buried in nature. You know, saying, so the first ransom note apparently said, oh, we've got your, hello, Savannah. We have your mother, Nancy. If you don't pay this money, we're going to kill her. It was like cold-hearted, you know, if you don't pay us the money for this ransom by a certain date, time, we're going to kill her. That's what they said in the first one. They were hard, sounding like hardened criminals, if it is a genuine ransom note. Then the second ransom note, it was like, oh, oopsie, sorry, she just died on us. We're so sorry. Then suddenly they were, oh, so sorry. So they went from being hardened criminals who had kidnapped her, and if if the ransom's not paid, we're going to kill her, to, oh, sorry, she died by accident. It just doesn't make sense to me, that. It really doesn't. Anyway, you know, Savannah seems to think those first 2 ransom notes were genuine, and she would think that because the FBI had led her to believe that. She just recently did that last appeal, which really felt like she was speaking to somebody directly. You know, who was she, you know, addressing that appeal to? Because she was saying, oh, we know you're not a bad person. Of course they're a fucking bad person. They're a bad person. They kidnapped an 84-year-old woman, and she's, you know, if this is true, they've kidnapped an 84-year-old woman, took her out of her bed in the dead of night with a gun and wearing balaclavas and God knows what. Yes, they are a bad person. They're a bad person. What's the point in, I mean, I know that that's probably what she's been said to try and get around them or whatever, but everybody knows whoever took Nancy or did whatever happened to Nancy, because we still don't really know what, they're a bad person. They're not a good person. And if Nancy died by accident, rather than them killing her because her heart couldn't take, you know, the fact a balaclavaed man came in with a gun and, you know, like most of us would have a heart attack, I think, whether you had a bad heart or not. That's still murder as far as the law is concerned. Murder while a kidnapping is being committed, you know, that's a hefty, you know, that will right away is a life sentence. And then, of course, Savannah has offered this massive reward that nobody's taken up. So that says to us that it's either one person working on their own, or maybe it's some sort of a family affair, like a tight-knit group of people who won't give each other up even for $1 million. Is that possible? But to me, if that massive reward hasn't brought anyone out of the woodwork yet, I don't think it ever will, personally. Because maybe people can't come out the woodwork without compromising themselves. But of course, what they could do is some sort of plea deal with the authorities, couldn't they? And maybe they won't be able to get the ransom, but maybe they'd be able to get the ransom to go to their families if they've got family and they're thinking, oh, they're going to be in prison for a long time. I'm sure some sort of deal, one way or another, would be worked out. But nobody's come forward. So it leads you to believe that maybe there is no one to come forward, or maybe those ransom notes are not genuine. I've never felt they were genuine, but the FBI seem to think they are. So they know more than I do. So just seems strange to me. 1 minute it's, oh, we've got your mother Nancy and we're going to kill her if you don't pay this money, blah, 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 blah. And then the next minute it's, oh, we're so sorry. She died, but it's okay because she's buried in nature, and was very sorry about that. But they're not even trying to get money to say where her body is. And do they really think that this family are going to rest until they know they want their mum back, whether it's dead or alive? Anybody would. Though I still don't understand why no searches are being made for Nancy. I know it's a big area, but they won't, not only they're not searching for her, but they won't accept help from people who are offering to help. It's very weird, isn't it? It's almost like, do they have an idea where she is? I don't know. Now, the other news I want to tell you, which I think is really important, is that two of the people that were detained for this investigation right back in the early days, when it felt like there was a flurry of activity and it felt like this case was going to get solved quite soon, didn't it? It did feel like that. And Carlos, what's his full name? Carlos Palazuelos. He has filed a lawsuit. He and another person who was detained, who actually I didn't really know about. So men detained, I'm reading, I can't share it because I don't know how to share it, just on the YouTube stream. But the men detained in the Guthrie investigation file notice of a claim against the Pima County Sheriff. So more than 5 months after Carlos Palazuelos and Daniel Maddox were detained for several hours in the search for Nancy Guthrie's kidnapper. Now, I might be able to get it up on my phone and show it you that way. Now, the thing is, neither of them were charged. Nobody's been charged, but they were detained. And also, of course, Luke Daly, he was another one that was detained, but he hasn't been charged either. But they haven't been cleared. And we know that because recently in one of the interviews that Nanos did, he was asked specifically, had those people been cleared? And he said, nobody's been cleared. That's when he said, no one's been cleared. So, they're bound to be a bit annoyed, really, because they were detained, questioned for hours. Luke Daly had his car towed away and examined, but they've still not been cleared. Even though they haven't been charged, they have not been cleared. So what's the situation here? Anyway, they've sued for a lot of money. So they've issued what's called a notice of claim against the Pima County Sheriff and a detective. And this is a precursor to a possible lawsuit. It's addressed to Sheriff Chris Nanos and a detective. It alleges wrongful arrest and property damage. Now, wrongful arrests, I thought they weren't arrested. I thought they were detained but not arrested. But anyway, so Carlos Palazuelos, one of the men named in the claim, was detained on February the 10th. So this is ages ago, for questioning and released later without any charges as authorities search for who kidnapped Nancy. The same day, the other man, Daniel Maddox, was placed in handcuffs at the home that was searched and held for several hours. It also names his mother, who owns the home, and alleges damage to the property. So the notice was dated Monday and says that deputies arrested Carlos at gunpoint and held him without probable cause for approximately 7 to 8 hours, and the arrest was made in a public fashion. It says that Palazuelos is innocent. His home was ransacked. It alleges physical, emotional, and reputational harm. And it says that Nanos posted on social media a person had been arrested and said the subject is currently being questioned in connection to the Nancy Guthrie investigation. And that post, in conjunction with statements from the sheriff's office, made Palazuelos look like a suspect to the world, the notice says. And despite requests by undersigned counsel, Sheriff Nanos and the PCSD have refused to retract their statements or to make it clear that Carlos is innocent and had no involvement in the Guthrie case. Yeah. So do they still think he's involved, but they just haven't got evidence against him? What do you think? What do you think? It's a strange one, isn't it? No, I mean, you would be annoyed if you were arrested like that, held at gunpoint and publicly. So his issue will be that everybody now thinks he's probably involved. Until the sheriff turns around and says, no, he's definitely not involved, he's always going to be under suspicion, isn't he? So this man who identified himself as Palazuelos, who's a delivery driver, had an interview with Telemundo outside his home in Rio Rico, around 60 miles south of Tucson, in connection with the still unsolved case. And he said he was not involved. And the notice also says that Daniel Maddox's detention in his home was wrongful and has caused him significant physical, mental, emotional pain and suffering. He says that men in military gear pointed guns at him, told him to lie on the ground in the hallway of his home when he left his room to investigate a loud noise. Maddox was held under guard at a van for several hours, the notice says. So the home is owned by Maddox's mother, Josephina Maddox, who is also named in the notice. So the Sheriff's Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment about the notice. An emailed message seeking comment was also sent to the county government. And the lawyers wrote in the notice they were offering to settle the claims for $2.5 million. And it also offers to settle the claims relating to Daniel Maddox for $500,000 and Josephina Maddox for $250,000. And in addition to Nanos and the detective, it lists the county and the Sheriff's Department as subject to possible future claims. Now, of course, Nanos, he just keeps saying the case is active, we're working as hard as we can, we're still investigating the DNA and digital evidence. Of course, Samantha Guthrie just recently made a fresh appeal, didn't she, saying the family is in agony. This is what she said: the world can be a cruel and unforgiving place, and I know you've tried to do things the right way. So I'm asking you, begging you, do the right thing now. Make the right choice. Help us find her. Tell us where to look for her. So what do you think? Now, well, it's true, David. It looks like it may go unsolved, which is very sad. I hope not. But to me, this is my humble opinion. It's more important, rather than thinking about who has made these lawsuits, let's think about who hasn't made a lawsuit. Why haven't they? So first of all, Luke Daly hasn't presented a lawsuit, or at least as far as we know, not yet anyway. So Carlos has presented a lawsuit, and Daniel Maddox and his mum. Why hasn't Luke Daly, the other person who was detained and his house searched and his car searched, etc., he hasn't made a claim? And who's the other person who hasn't made a legal claim? Tommaso and Annie. Why haven't they? Because that video that Ashley Banfield did, talking about Tommaso as the prime suspect, is still up there. And in fact, Ashley has doubled down on her claims. That's what she was told by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Her sources, who she's now saying are actual deputies. Why haven't Tommaso sued? Because they've come under a lot of bad attention because of that video, because of those claims, that they had something to do with it. Why hasn't Tommaso put in a claim to get that video taken down, at least maybe a cease and desist or something? I'm sure if he contacted Ashley Banfield and, said to her, can you take that video down because there's no substantive proof, or he threatened to sue her, or he threatened to sue Pima County Sheriff's Department, do you see what I'm saying? Why hasn't it? What would you do? I mean, I tell you what, if my mum went missing and then somebody went out on a podcast and said, oh, it's Vicky Marie who's done it, she's the prime suspect, and I wasn't, I would be straight there getting them to telling them to take that video down and take it back. Wouldn't you? Strange, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe just feels that would give more fodder to the to Ashley Banfield, to the podcast, or to all podcasters, because everybody would talk about it. If he did sue Ashley Banfield or do a cease and desist, and she came out openly about it, everybody would be talking about it more. Maybe that's why he doesn't. Maybe he just wants everything to be quiet. Not because he's guilty, but he just doesn't want to be in the public eye. What do you think? I mean, a lot of people do think that Tommaso and Annie are involved. I don't know, literally don't know. Statistics say yes, but there's no evidence to say yes. So I just cannot believe that what it all comes down to for me is an 84-year-old woman disappeared into a puff of smoke in the middle of the morning. I cannot believe the FBI haven't been able to trace the emails, the ransoms, don't know more about where these people disappeared to. How do the FBI know so little after all this time? 6 months down the line, no vehicle, no suspect, nothing. And I still want to know what's in that bloody backpack. that poor guy had. I think I still, this is, and again, only my opinion, and it could, like you say, David, it could be anybody who knows who did this. But to me, I think she was deliberately targeted, not for money. I think she was deliberately targeted to be murdered. And I think the kidnap story is all a big hoax. That's what I think. I'm not saying the kidnap notes aren't genuine. I think they are genuine, but I don't think there was genuinely a kidnap. I think that's just to take away attention from what the real reason was. And of course, everybody seems to think that it was Savannah who was the real target. She's the famous one, and maybe it was. And that's why I suppose they're always leaving it to Savannah to make the appeals. You never see Annie making an appeal on her own, do you? We saw a couple of appeals in the beginning where the whole family were appealing. Cameron, the brother, he did one solitary appeal, but we've not seen another appeal from him. So all the focus is on Savannah. Is that because the FBI believe that Savannah was the target, that this is to cause damage to Savannah? In the first kidnap note, they did say, "Hello, Savannah, we have your mother, Nancy." But that was a couple of days after it had come out that Savannah was, that Nancy was Savannah's mother. No, it's entirely possible that Nancy might have peed someone off somewhere along the line, or somebody who owed money to her and didn't want to pay it back, or I don't know, a grievance about a job that was done and she wasn't happy with it, or there's a million reasons why somebody can hurt somebody else. Sometimes they're just reasons that you can't believe, but yeah, so we've got to keep our thinking caps on of this case. We all want to see it resolved. Want to see the end of the, Savannah looked so upset in her last video that she did. We want to see an end to that misery, even, if it is a body that ends up coming back, at least to find out what happened to her mum. Imagine not knowing where your mum is. Not knowing if she's dead or alive. Is she buried somewhere? Is she out just in the desert, with vultures picking at her bones? I mean, it's terrible to think about. Just to get her remains back will be a comfort, a cold comfort, but a comfort. Imagine your mum. We've all got a mum. Imagine your mum just disappearing. And no ideas what has happened to her 6 months later. I think when people go missing, this is the hardest for people to cope with. It is horrible when people get murdered, of course, but at least you know where they are. At least you can bury them. At least you can say goodbye to them. You can seek justice for them. This is just like a limbo, isn't it? Not even knowing what happened to her. Just knowing that something happened to her because of the blood on the porch, and the fact she's disappeared into a puff of smoke. She could be anywhere. Where is she? Just terrible. My heart just breaks because we know we've got invested in Nancy's case. And, there's times when I'm thinking about Nancy so much, but at the end of the day, my life carries on as normal. Of course, this week it's been like the funeral of my sister or whatever, or then there'll be another case like the Anne Widdecombe case that seems to have gone all quiet. Has everyone forgotten that she was murdered as well? I need to do an update on that. Maybe we won't get to know anything until his next next court appearance, but just feels like, I don't know. Cases move on, don't they? For us, if you're interested in true crime and you follow a case and you get really involved in it, but then other cases come along. But for these people, the families, the friends, there is no other case. This is the only case, as far as they're concerned, is Nancy and where she is. or isn't, because this is a huge gap in their lives. And Nancy's not there, and they don't, but not only that, they don't know where she is. Terrible, awful to cope with. My heart just goes out to them, it really does. So I hope they get their answers. I hope they get their answers, and I hope they get them soon. I mean, the fact is that in all these kind of cases, it can break just like that. I mean, literally, I'm on here doing this video saying there is no breaks in the case, really. And it literally could be, as soon as I come off stream later on today, a suspect's arrested. That's how quick it could change. So we have to remember that. Now, we've been waiting for this for a long time. It seems like all through these 6 months, there's someone or another saying case is going to break. Things are brewing. Feel in my water that something's going to break. Nothing has broken. You know, I don't have those feelings about this case. I think it will get solved sooner or later, but I have no idea when. Just hope it's more sooner than later. But anyway, thank you for watching. I'm off. I will see you really soon in the next video. Thank you all for your likes, your subscribes. Don't forget to leave your DNA on the subscribe button, please, and the like button. We just keep praying for Nancy. What else can we do? So take care. I'll see you really soon in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you. Bye.